Welcome, everyone. So nice to have you here. I'm Dr. Z, if we haven't met, internal medicine physician, and real excited today to share an interesting clinical study with you. One of my favorite things to do in medicine, dig down into the historical medical literature and take a look at studies that have been done in the past, get into a different era, a different time, and see how people were thinking in the past. Same human beings, same human bodies in the past, but different context. This is a big thing I try to communicate, that we are living in a difficult metabolic time, and so we want to bring every resource, every good thought to it. So I'm going to share this with you today. Jump into this paper. This is Philadelphia General Hospital, 1963, doing a fasting study with 107 patients that were admitted to the hospital and treated with a period of extended fasting, which ranged between 4 and 14 days. So here on the channel, Simple Fasting channel, the process that I am teaching and sharing, simple fasting, is basically the very simplest, easiest end of the spectrum of fasting. Fasting within a day, or maybe out to a day. Maybe you could say alternate daily fasting. Fast for a day and then have some eating practice might be the extent of simple fasting. Extended fasting, like they're doing in this study. In this study, they do a couple things. They do shorter fasting and some periods of extended fasting in the hospital. Not something that I have people do. It is, I have personally done an extended fast on a couple occasions. And I have interacted with people who have done it and people who have had tremendous benefit from it. But it is a very advanced thing to do in my perspective. So much more intensity than a simple fasting practice. But my big goal in sharing this with you today is just to gain perspective from it. Can we learn from the experience that these people are having, including the ways that it shaped their intermittent fasting, that they call it, the shorter fasting? And I will say, I also have a very open mind to it, as far as, the experience that people had in these studies. There is a very open space in the healthcare space to be able to tap in and use this process, and so much more learning that we can do about it. So let's dive into it. It's so interesting. So 1963, remember, we did the talk, The Hidden History of Obesity, and we looked at modern series of weight trends, and they pretty much start here in the 60s. And we have said, oh, that was normal, like back then was normal, and then look at this whole problem with weight that has arisen since the 60s. Now, it's very interesting. Now we're diving into medical paper from the 60s. Doctors here, Garfield Duncan, MD, writing to us about their experience in the 60s. Here's how he starts. Obesity is a major clinical and public health problem. That's how they were seeing it. Remember, so we're seeing their vantage point is heading way back. They're seeing, what we were seeing in those deeper histories, that the roots of our metabolic problem going very deep into the past. They're saying here basically 1 out of 15 adults, at least 20% above their average weight. And they're seeing this is a major problem. We see that and we say, oh, if we could only get back to that. That's the vision. That's where we're going. Build the systems and processes to help everybody thrive and flourish. Get back to this place. They just make these observations to start with. We're seeing the correlation with high blood pressure. We're seeing the correlation with heart disease and with diabetes in people who are struggling with weight. So, of course, they're trying to move toward it like we're trying to move toward it so that we can help avoid all of these outcomes. Here at the beginning of the study, they're just outlining some of the other literature. So there is a whole community. They're listing at least 5 different doctors in this paper who are independently studying fasting in their practices. Here's some of what they say. Bloom found that short periods of fasting as an introduction to the treatment of obesity were effective and well tolerated. His patients experienced a sense of well-being. This, I tell you, this is what I want for everybody. This is a big drive behind simple fasting. I want everybody experiencing as much well-being as possible. This is how we want to change the perspective and the narrative. I think our culture saying, oh, fasting is like a deprivation, fasting difficult, and it can be, okay? But this is why it is a practice, and as we learn to do it, this is the goal, that we experience well-being, find a space of peace and contentment from it. Hey, I should throw this up there. I tell you, throw chat comments, throw your thoughts, observations as we go along. If you're here with me live, and if you're coming through on the replay, let's have an ongoing conversation about it. He's listing these other doctors employing total fast between 1 and 15 days as a means, they say, of reducing obese, diabetic, and non-diabetic patients. This is interesting language. Would you like to be reduced? I don't know. Reducing the weight. Subsequently, 1 and 2 day fasts were introduced at varying intervals to effect continued reduction in weight and to overcome tendencies to gain weight. This is so interesting, most of these patients had abandoned hope that they could reduce on diets that would reduce so-called normal individuals. What does that mean now? Each patient was hospitalized for clinical evaluation and the initial fasting. So interesting, 107 patients admitted to the hospital. Like, I was trying to do some preliminary work. Like, this wouldn't even have been that expensive in the past. Like, you think about trying to do that now, the cost. I was reviewing a couple years ago, maybe I'd do another talk, let me know if you'd like to hear it, a New England Journal of Medicine article just from a few years ago on fasting was suggesting building fasting centers, not in a hospital, but in places where people can go to do something like this. We'll talk more about that. They did a bunch of labs for people coming in. This would, be, I think, really, if you're going to head into an extended fasting session, I think this is, very wise. Get all your labs checked. They're monitoring people's blood sugar, ketones, electrolytes too. Yes, 107 patients seen on the public wards. Water allowed as desired, also weak tea or coffee, and flavored beverages of no food value. Yeah, think of that in the past. I don't think people had invented any artificial sweeteners back then yet either, but they wouldn't have, I bet they wouldn't have allowed it. I hope. Okay, so they go through, they got 107 patients. They do 3 cases where they do just some case studies just to show what these people did, what they experienced, and then they provide some results at the end of the broader series of patients that they followed over almost 3 years. So very cool. All right, first person that came in, a white female. I just thought this was, very interesting to point out. Remember, this is 1963. We did the session on Martin Luther King Jr. Day where we were looking at the civil rights movement that is happening, just getting back into a hospital at this time, remember, are segregated. It's just so wild still to think of that. Go listen to Dr. King talk about some of that if you are interested. A young woman, 16, teenager, coming in. 172 pounds, 5 feet tall, BMI 33.6. Brought in for the correction of obesity. brought in an initial 7-day fast. She lost 13.5 pounds in a week. Look, here's the chart of her experience, and let me walk you through what this is showing. Here's, in this section, they're showing her initial fast in the hospital over 7 days. Here are the days as we are marching along here. And this graph is showing her ketone levels as she ramped up on the fasting. And then anorexia as a medical term is meaning lack of hunger. So meaning the appetite is going away. And so what we can see is the appetite as we hit day 2, gone, and then stayed out for the remainder of her time in the hospital. This is what's so interesting. Initial hunger. This is what people experience in general. This is my experience doing an extended fast. Hunger in the first day, day and a half, and then it resolves. As the ketones go up, ketones and other hormonal processes in the body, it's just shutting down the hunger system. And this is something really interesting for us to think about as we say, what is, the easiest path to losing weight? One of the biggest struggles, right, is hunger and cravings and being in a cycle with food. So this is showing us some incredible physiology in the body, that the path toward even more significant levels of fasting is not the way it is popularly perceived. People who actually experience and do it, most of the time experience this. You pass through the hunger experience, and then it ends up sending the signals to the body, shut down hunger. It's just saying we're not doing that now, and we fire up access to the reserve energy, and people flowing through a large period of time actually feeling quite well and pleasant. People describe that to be out of hunger cravings is actually an incredible experience. Okay, so she spent a week in the hospital. Then we flow through this dotted line is 3 months. And she was sent home on a diet that is 1,500 calories a day, that was split 50% carbs and a quarter fat and a quarter protein, and then 1 fasting day per week. And then the rest was eat whatever you want, meal-wise, and trying to hit that 1,500 calorie target. And so over this time, came back to the hospital at the start of the 4th month, weighing less than when she came in, and then did a second fast, had the same experience. But if you look, the anorexia period, the hunger going away, started halfway into the first day and then stayed there. They describe in this portion, took a little break on the diet after they went home and then resumed it. And so basically, by the end of about 6 months, she had taken the BMI from 33.6 down to 28.3. Okay, patient number 2. Gentleman, age 36. They're describing, basically 10 years ago, college age, 140 pounds, 1953. By 1960, 185, and then started having blood pressure going up. Weight up to, by 1962, to 214. And so this gentleman brought in for a total fast from March 13 through 28th in the hospital. Brought the weight down from 214 at admission down to 188. And so initial BMI 33.5, and here we can see the chart in the hospital section. And then they describe in the text that hunger also for this person resolved in the 2nd day and then continued for the entire 14 days. Patient did not experience hunger during this period, and they're showing the ketone levels up, meaning the body's mobilizing the energy, the body fat. And then here at this line, now we're discharged from the hospital, and then now we're followed out months after fasting, all the way out 6 months. And then these lines are demonstrating fasting days. So fasting day at home. initially we're doing this weekly, and then we switch out, to every 2 or 3 weeks doing the fast. As his body weight is normalizing, look, BMI 23.5, all the way from 33 to 23, went from obesity to a normal weight over the course of 6 months, a little over 6 months through this process. And so many fascinating things that we are seeing in this process. They put him on the same diet, 1,500 calories as the other person, and then 1 fasting day a week. So this is the type of physiology of the body. This is what you can see when you do something like this. I've seen people do have exactly this type of efficacy. Although not necessarily with a loading phase. I've never admitted anyone to the hospital for an intense fast like this. I've had people do it on their own. I think this is an incredible resource for someone to have someone in the hospital supported by staff, having all of their labs, blood pressure, everything monitored. I think it's the ideal way to do it, man, if you were going to do it. I wrote in purple here, could you just skip this initiation and go straight to this intermittent fasting, right? What if we just started here, and then did this, Would the line probably do the same thing? Probably. This is like a launch pad of some kind, whoa, launch it into the stratosphere and then you're already flying when you hit this. Whereas here is going to have to do some work. It raises some interesting questions. I mean, a study like this, you say, I want to do so many more studies. And we want giant, out of $1 trillion health system, we wish we could do randomized controlled trials of something like this, Totally cool. Having this experience, right? This is an experience. To have that experience to start this out, though, to realize that hunger can go away, to miss a meal for 1 day. If you just had an experience where you went for 14 days and you were not experiencing any hunger for 13 of them, you see, is wild. It just, the point that I want to especially bring home for us here is how incredible this physiology is in the body, and to help open our mind to say, oh, we are struggling about eating our next meal or not. If we're eating 2 times in a day, we say, I wish I could do an OMAD or something like this. I just want to open, the conversation in the mind to see what the human body is capable of, and actually to get into the space when you fully open up that fasting space, that you can actually find a space where there is actually, like they say in here, that people actually enjoying it, that people finding contentment in it, not struggling with hunger. This is a question, I'm asking it as a question, how efficacious would it be just start at this point without doing this? Well, there is a case to be made. Maybe this is important, when we are sitting into that space or learning how to do it. Do we make ourselves struggle more by eating, not eating, eating, not eating? It's does actually the bigger fasting space, would it actually be easier? Do we have, I think that even for myself, to have to just open up my mind even more to it. I've been completely dialed in, helping people just sit in that simple space, which I'm going to keep doing. But I think this is fun just to think about and realize, man, there's a lot of space. That's fasting in general, right? Fasting is open space. There's a lot of space to explore in fasting as we're sitting here, in our space in 2026, and we're saying, how do we move powerfully in a direction of health? It's just inspiring to me that even in 1963, people doing powerful, powerful studies and just really working this process in a deep way, to me is inspiring. Here's a gentleman, the third patient they discuss, age 53. Yes, thank you for bringing this up. I watched an interview with this gentleman, Dr. Goldhammer. He's got a book that I've ordered on it as I'm doing some studying on this. I watched, he did an interview on Diary of a CEO. Did you see that? This doctor, where he talks, how long, I think he's been operating this since the 80s, so he has a center, he's doing things like that. So there is a center, at least one place in the world where they are doing things like that. And I was actually inspired to dig into this after watching his talk. Is really, really interesting. Male, 53 years old, had significant hypertension. I think 3 drugs, right? Hydrochlorothiazide, was still using that one. Hydralazine, yep, that's like an adjunctive one. We still use it. This one I don't know about. Mecanylamine. Okay, we don't use that one. Okay. Blood pressure, 210/130. At one point, very high. Retinal changes present, meaning he's having observable vascular damage from the blood pressure, weight 325. Brought into a 14-day fast, able to stop all of his antihypertensive drugs, and blood pressure normalized. Look at that, 130/75 over 14 days. That's incredible. Someone having severe vascular damage from high blood pressure, 3 drugs, not controlling it, and the fasting controlled it. Like the fasting obliterated it. I was listening to that Dr. G that you were describing. His experience, and he's helped thousands. I think he said 25,000 people they've brought through their extended fasting clinic. His belief is that all hypertension will resolve if you open up enough fasting space for it in the extended fasting. I was reflecting a lot about that myself. My experience, because I help people fast within a day. That's basically what I've done. Simple fasting, say we're just going to do maybe 1 day of fasting. My experience doing that with people with high blood pressure is it somewhere 30 to 40% of people will have like something like this resolve it, a really powerful effect even in that first space. But it's not everybody, and nobody has it worsen for sure. Some people have it improve a little bit, but not as much as other people who have it resolve. I think the position from Dr. G would be you want to really open up more healing space. You got to get into a more powerful space like this for some people. Like I say in so many things, there's not a one-size-fits-all policy or practice across any dietary practice, and that's for sure true in fasting as anything else. Okay, here's the chart for this gentleman who went through his process. Started with a BMI of 46 and a half, and then over 10 months of this practice, got his BMI down to 35 through this. Same sort of process. They don't show the little marks on here, but he was doing an approximately 1,500 calorie a day diet. We don't have compliance measures on it, exactly how much, and then 1 full fasting day per week. Same sort of thing, Had an incredible experience doing this fasting, helped incredibly with the blood pressure. Could you have started the same thing here, and would it have just taken longer? Probably, I think. This is a point I want to make as they're starting the results section here. 107 patients, only 2 dropped out, meaning like left the hospital and said, I don't want to continue the fast. A couple people, and 2 people, I think, in the first day or 2 said, it wasn't for them. 105 stayed and did it. That was my experience in the clinical trial that I did, observational study while I was at the university. As I was setting it up, I'm working with researchers and a team of people to do it. And people are like, so many people going to drop out, like over half the people going to drop out of your study. And I'm like, I don't know. Like my experience is like, people usually not going to sign up for it unless they're excited. And most people who start doing it, like want to work on it. And so we only had 1. My study was small. It was only 20 people. But we only had 1. It was a 6-month study. 1 person dropped out of the study. So 2 out of 107 with something so intense. Very interesting experience. Just some things they commented in this study. They were measuring everyone's salt loss, and they say, yes, people did lose salt in the first 2 days. No one ever developed hyponatremia. That's like very interesting. That part of what we're seeing is the physiology, right? As we start fasting, people will lose salt. We lose some water weight right away. That's why, and that happens on a lot of diets, right? You initially lose some water weight. That's why like the first bit of weight loss, someone starts, like the rate is almost always higher because like water is shifting in the body, salt is shifting. It's so interesting. You say, you know, this feels good to me, like check all the labs, like a doctor, say you like, oh, I want to know the labs, I want to know vitals, I want to know everything, you know, I want every detail monitored. You know, 107 people went through this protocol. Nobody had a bad outcome, you know, nobody hyponatremia, hypokalemia, nobody blood pressure problems or anything. Things get better. It's a healing space. Mild degrees of weakness, especially for those who are the most active, were recorded initially, but did not require interrupting the fast. Headache and lightheadedness complained of in a few instances. Absolutely expected. Average weight loss, a little over 2 pounds per day during the fasting periods. Now they're heading into the aggregate data. The sense of well-being and cheerfulness was surprisingly constant. I just love that. It's like you think, you imagine somebody's perspective. I'm going to walk into a fasting ward where patients are here, nobody's eating. You think, wouldn't this be like the most gloomy place? Be like, oh, when will this be done? No. Surprisingly cheerful. Like, I don't know, exciting. That's been my experience. I've had people coming in say, man, who are on an extended fast. I know my experience, my energy level, way up. Anorexia was striking, meaning no hunger. See, striking. How would we like in society today to find an intervention or a process in which lack of hunger was striking? You know, I mean, think of the Super Bowl. We got Serena Williams, trying to get us all on pharmaceutical products now. You think of this experience, 1963, hundreds of people going through a process of this incredible process, nobody taking any drugs, you know what I mean? And people experiencing total elimination of hunger, losing huge amount of weight, basically for free, like not using a product, right? You say there's expense to be in the hospital, although not so much back then when we had a sane health system. Well, parts of it were sane, the civil rights part insane. But when the economics of it were more sane, when we didn't have the morass of insurance and all this sort of things dictating everything. But the actual process is nothing. That's what's so incredible about it. There's nothing to buy. Like the patients just came in. They didn't buy any products. They didn't consume anything. Just drink some water, hang out. Other parts in the studies, they played games. They hung out. Striking absence of hunger. Several patients expressed a desire to continue the fast beyond 14 days. Isn't that incredible? Very personal decision, right? The longer you head out in there, I do say the more risk there is. And people should be, if you are experiencing a blissful experience where your energy's high, you feel great, you have no hunger, no problems, it's a pretty good sign that everything is okay in the body and the body is going through a healing process. I'll just say, if you start having nasty experiences, some people come through having nasty experiences happening, I would say, whoa, that is big red flags. Nobody under any compulsion ever to push things to the limit. I mean, I think of the 2 extended fasts I did were 7 days each, and I reached a point where I clearly needed to stop. The hunger came back. I was like, oh man, like I've had enough. I didn't feel that on day 6. I was like, I feel like incredible. And then by the end of day 7, I was like, I think this needs to stop. So it stops. Close relationship between hyperketonemia and the loss of appetite in every case. If you watch the ketones go up, the hunger goes away. This is heading us in the, keto diet, right? This is the whole idea. We can support that process by the types of foods that we eat. If we are eating a very low-carb diet, we keep our blood sugar from going up. We keep our insulin level low, keeps access to the body fat without any barriers to it. This is the idea of keto. I personally love that physiology. I say mix as much keto as you want with the simple fasting process. So what I help people do, make the barrier between the two as low as possible so you can switch back and forth as easily as possible. I do like that. And then they note here, 3 cases of previously resistant psoriasis subsided during the reduction program. I love that. That's a little bonus. Like, this has been my experience with fasting. You cannot predict always. Sometimes other things get better. Can't always predict it. Sometimes people have miscellaneous things. You say, well, could fasting help it? I've tried to help people do that. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But sometimes you're just trying to fast to lose weight and all of a sudden something else gets better. I have a collection of stories of, there's a few, of people who have had, almost miraculous level of healing of things. The most incredible story, I think, is a gentleman who I was working with who was suffering from horrible chronic pain from trigeminal neuralgia for years and years and was on high doses of opiates and gabapentin and had never found any relief and had been to specialists, Mayo Clinic, all over Chicago, just traveling everywhere, trying to get help from it, and was so demoralized that they were just stress eating in any way to try to cope with this chronic pain, and they developed diabetes from it. And that's how they came to me, was for diabetes treatment. It was just a happenstance. This was early on, where I was just started working with fasting. I got this gentleman on a fasting protocol, got them to OMAD, they started losing weight, diabetes resolved, and the trigeminal neuralgia resolved. Completely off of all meds, no pain. I mean, it's just a total miracle. And patient lost the weight that they wanted. So sometimes you get a fasting bonus, and here we observe some psoriasis resolving in these patients, just awesome. In each instance of essential hypertension, the blood pressure decreased to normal during the fast. That's what you're seeing with Dr. G and his patients. You dial in some superpower fasting, it's just blows away the hypertension. It's totally amazing. Some summary and conclusions, okay? Total fast, 4 to 14 days, provide an effective means of reducing intractably obese patients. I'd write this in a nicer language, I would say an effective means of helping patients who are struggling with their weight to achieve, a better body weight, achieve their goal. Subsequent 1 or 2 day fasts, like we saw at varying intervals, serve to continue the reduction and permit a more liberal diet on a day-to-day basis. This is what I think is one of the true benefits of actually teaching yourself to dial in on some more intense fasting, is everything in balance. Right? I'm trying to help people bring everything into balance. When you are in a space and you realize even more intense amounts of fasting, I can actually find a space of peace and contentment here, that there's actually joy and happiness in this space. Whoa, and then you see it's powerful. It's helping weight to go down, help to balance. One of the things that you can do is liberalize the experience on other days. It's true. And then It's like, this is the sort of thing, like we want joy in fasting, joy in food. Like we need things that are sustainable, and it's enjoyable to eat food, and we want to eat and be satisfied and have these things. And so however these balance, like some people saying just like, just two meals a day, is about as far as I want, but you can stick with that routine. And does that work? You can think of stretching these apart a little bit more. What if we had, some 1 meals and then 3 meals, but it's still balanced out? What if we had some full fasting days and then could be like more balance on the other side? So I just think, I've observed that with people. That's a personal decision, and it can change. We can flow through seasons. Nothing about these processes to me is rigid. We were talking yesterday in the session, the structure that brings freedom, is saying, what does dietary freedom, weight loss freedom, eating freedom look like? It's like, well, do you have a structure that lets you eat in a way that brings joy to your life and still accomplish your goal? That's the thing. Like if we have just weight loss freedom that is, is not, nobody's losing any weight, we say, well, that is not, working. But is this part of the structure that we're seeing? Oh, there's like levels beyond what even your fasting guy is like thinking like is right here, Total diets, listen to this perspective. Total fasts have been better tolerated than diets low in calories. This has been my experience. It's been my experience to do it. Has it been your experience as you learn to do it? Very hard to eat chronically low-calorie restricted diets. Much easier to have a fasting period and then normal meals, They say presumably because of the anorexic effect associated with this former. This is what's interesting. We're getting physiologic effects in the body through fasting. You just think of it like a dial that's dialing out the hunger. They showed it in that study. This has been confirmed, by the way, in modern studies, right? The ketone levels heading up, hunger levels heading down. It's showing us how do we use the physiology of the body to get the effects we want. People say, well, I want to take a pill. I don't tell anyone not to do it, okay? Take all the GLP-1s you want, use it as a training wheels. That's how I try to say it, to teach yourself how to do these things. But what we start to realize is within the natural practices that we have, look, people having this effect, hunger going away in 1963, okay? No synthetic peptide hormones were taken. Okay, GLP-1, glycolipoprotein 1, is a natural hormone in the body, okay? And it has a lot of functions in the body. There's actually GLP-1 receptors all over the place, but they do help to regulate our satiety, how hungry we feel. Now, our GLP-1 levels can be impacted by many different things, including healthy foods versus unhealthy foods. When I did the study previous summer on artificial sweeteners, I think I did some of that study. I put it in that video that actually artificial sweeteners suppressing GLP-1 levels. Like, isn't that fascinating when you start to like get into the physiology of what's happening? Why do GLP-1s why are they working and helping people like the way they are? Like, 'cause we're deficient in GLP-1s is showing our diet is both deficient in things that help support the natural hormones of the body, and they're present with things that are actively suppressing us. This is why I say, okay, we have to get the unnatural foods out. They're harming the body. They're poisoning the system, They're messing up all of our hormones that are leaving us feeling chronically unsatisfied. We need to get all the artificial things out and replace it with the whole natural foods that support that process naturally so that we can feel good and satisfied. This is why we want satisfying meals. And then we get this physiology like they're describing here. As we open up the fasting space, we train to do it. So you get better over time because, okay, we build experience, but we also train the body to get better at it. Like it showed the second time that first woman was in the hospital, her hunger went away sooner, So she was training it. She was getting used to it. The body is getting stronger in its ability to do it. Okay, I want to show you this data out to 32 months. This is like the reality of what people experienced out to 3 years. Continued to lose weight after the hospital discharge out to 3 years. 17% less at 3 years than when they left the hospital. 43% same, so at least maintained. So putting that together, 60% of people 3 years later weighing the same or less than when they started the protocol, and then 40% put the weight back on. Compare that to anything that we have in our current setup. You know, the data of the amount of people who go on any weight loss product in our modern area and go any kind of diet, any kind of process, it's the vast majority of people have regained or exceeded their weight by 3 years. And so this is not a randomized controlled trial. This is an observational series, but I think it is a very reality-based observational series of reflecting my experience working with many, many hundreds of people doing fasting and a fasting process. Absolutely, there are certain numbers of people who do not stick with any sort of process. In order to have benefits from any kind of dietary process in the long term, it has to become a lifestyle. There's no benefit, for example, from being admitted to the hospital, doing an intense fast like this, and then going back and just doing the same things that you were doing before. You will just regain the weight and you will go back. And so presumably some people did that. And you can understand that, right? This is like a different frame of mind. And especially you go back to 1963, where was this on anybody's radar? These people, I say way, you know, you say, I was going to say ahead of their time, but then we go back and people were fasting in ancient Greece in 2000 BC too, you know? So there's a thread throughout history of a certain percentage of people who are just recognizing all the time there's an outlet somewhere. Go see Dr. G in California, like you're saying. But as far as, you know, the mainstream, man, it just so many questions I have about just this data right here. Don't you just want to sit down and meet all of these people and talk through their experiences and understand what was the experience like for the 40% of people who didn't stick with it? And, you know, wouldn't a thoughtful healthcare system be the type of thing where we would meet these people and say, like, try to figure out what were the barriers, what were the challenges, and how do we derive systems and processes? Because, like, look at the potential of it. The potential is so huge. It's the exact type of thing that we need in this exact moment. And to have a system that would help as many people as possible. It's probably not possible to help, you know, 100% of the people 100% of the time, right? This is a very deep and difficult space to dive into. But even with this, like, which was basically a pilot program that these people came up with, say 60% of people who went through their basically trial run of this process over 3 years, like, had really incredible results, you know? And so we want to learn from those people. What exactly did those people do? What exactly was their experience, and how did they do it? Just to learn from it. And so things that I'm taking away from this is, like, how incredible it is that we did not dive deep through these processes, that the places where it's happening are the places outside of the medical system, you know, that you have to almost get out of healthcare in order to encounter something that is so profound, you know. It's just wild to think about. What would it look like to reincorporate something like this into the healthcare system? I'd do another talk probably on it, because there are some fantastic researchers who have proposed some models, like I was saying, fasting centers, where we bring together multidisciplinary teams of people, get everybody together, doctors and nurses and dietitians and health psychologists, counselors, and I say also artists and musicians and all these sort of things. Bring everybody together, make it a party, make it like a really fun, make it a wellness center and a retreat, whereas, like, everything that is happening there is supporting people to have a profound, life-changing experience, to get people results like this that they like, that they feel good about, nobody suffering or struggling, like as many people as possible. Like, the potential is just so extraordinary. And I just wish we could manifest it. You know what I mean? I wish we could just create it right now. But I don't know. Maybe I gotta get Dr. G. Maybe I'll go to his center. You know, we get an interview. I would like to do more interviews. Some people doing it, you know, right now. But we want it to expand. We want it to expand. I would love to do alternate daily fasting as a lifestyle. Just can't seem to get there. Hey, it's okay. Let's look in the big picture for just a little bit. How long have we been chatting? I don't even know. It's been a little over a year or something to when you first came on the channel. You know, look at just this one little pilot study out to 3 years, you know? So, hey, we're going to get to some things that they conclude in this paper, but they basically say, like, we have got to open our mind to, like, a bigger process and, like, more time. And so what I tell you is that you dialed in on a mindset, and it can happen in the future. And it doesn't have to either. And like, everything okay. Keep working. You're on a process. We're all on a process, and we're moving toward things. Keep the energy positive and thoughtful and looking forward. You have climbed a mountain already. Good morning. Hello. Welcome. So nice to have you here. I hope you're well today. Let me dive in more. Yeah. Hey, I love this idea. Fasting party. You know, medicine is such, and there's certainly places for it. I was going to say it's just such a sterile analytical space that is, and you know, you need that in the operating room, right? It needs to be literally sterile and probably robotic, right? Robots taking over surgeries. And so that's fine. But like all of medicine does not need to be like that. And when we open our mind to health and healing in a bigger fashion, and especially on this level for our metabolism, right? Like this is a much more open, exciting space than we've made it. Like to take a space where we're just trying to float through a space, you know, here I'm doing kind of an academic talk or whatever. This is kind of why I've tried in a lot of our sessions, weave in some music, you know, because to me, music is the type of thing that helps to bring down stress. If I had to go into a center, like I'm just thinking about my experience doing extended fasting, like if I had to do some extended fasting, I would like it to be in a place where there's concerts, you know? I would like some musicians coming in, playing me some beautiful concertos. I'd like to be able to close my eyes and just listen to the cello playing. And then I would like people coming in and, you know, like do a play, you know, just do some, you know, just really fun stuff, you know? That'd be a fasting party. Yes, I would love an interview like that. I want to do lots of interviews. I don't know how people do it. Like I'm doing my best. I throw some stuff out on YouTube. I send some emails to people. If anybody's coming through, if you are a fasting interested a person of any kind, you want to come on the show, you want to do an interview, I invite. You want me to come on your show? We have a nice talk. We make it as fun as we can. I throw it out there. Glad to hear you are doing well. So good to have you here. Now, what's interesting about this study, we don't do, look at the discussion. The discussion section of this paper is an actual discussion that was written back and forth between the reviewers and medical colleagues of this, and I just pulled out a few points of it. When I published my paper, you know, it's peer-reviewed. I went back and forth with the reviewers who reviewed my study. And it was a very interesting dialogue, but we don't publish the dialogue. And so it's just interesting to see the dialogue, like after the paper, then there's this addendum, which was really interesting to read through. Here's a couple highlights of the discussion about this paper. Dr. Francis Wood in Philadelphia says, I think that what you have demonstrated is something we have all learned about life in general, that abstinence is very much easier to practice than temperance. I thought that was very insightful. That is, in general, one of the big reasons that a fasting process is more helpful than a standard diet. There's many hormonal reasons we've gotten into, but just this fact of being a human being. This is the Pringles commercial, right? Bet you can't eat just one. You eat one chip, you're going to want 10. And but to have 0 chips, you're okay. And this is the observation. And so this is the paradox of fasting, that by opening up fasting space, we actually suppress hunger through different mechanisms. Doesn't mean that that is a infallible process. And I hear what you're saying. Say, I want to do alternate daily fasting. It's hard. Tell me the hardest parts. Is it the hunger that is part of it? Does that flare up in that space? Is that the barrier, or are there other barriers? Barriers are real. I don't want to create any process to sugarcoat anything, or say a process like this is like just easy thing. The point of presenting this study is just to try to open our mind. Sometimes we say, oh, we're reaching a point. We say, oh, this is like the difficult point. We've said this. We're climbing the mountain. We're going through our process. And we reach the highest point. We've talked about a plateau. We're re-envisioning a plateau. We did that session the other day. We look at plateau as coming down to it and like stuck there. And I say, let's invert that and realize a plateau is like we've climbed up this point in the mountain. We never got this far before, and now we're at this space. We realize that's okay. That's an okay place to be. Plateau becomes okay. And we're sitting in that space. Yeah. Finding peace, contentment in that space. This is, when we're thinking of a plateau this way, we worry about it bouncing. Okay, when we're coming at a plateau this way, we worry, we say, do we turn back the other way? When we're finding the edge of where we are, okay, and this can be in anything in life, any type of goal we're trying to accomplish, we reach the edge of our comfort zone, the edge of where we are. So you're pushing on that space, right? The tendency is to turn back. The tendency is I can't go any farther because we've reached the limits of our mental capacity of what is normal for us. We have to say we have stretched ourselves a long way. Okay, so can we recenter that? Can we bring that back into space? That's why a plateau is okay. We're like adjusting here. We're building up the space to make the next leg up. Now, from this perspective, what we're seeing here, especially as we get into that physiology, the people who doing the extended fasting, it's into the second day that most of the people experience the really profound appetite suppression effects. And so what that is showing us, what is actually the easy path? And this is what I'm really challenging myself, with to think about. What is really the easy path? To me, alternate daily fasting has been the edge of what I consider simple. But then I challenge it when I am thinking this. The simple place for many people in studies like this, we can go through other studies too, it gets simpler into the second day and beyond. And is it actually pushing through is actually the simplest process, as opposed to always hitting ourselves food and then try to fast to that point, food and then try to fast to that point. Is it actually simpler just to completely open it up and not to keep struggling with it, That has been, is something to think about. What is actually the simplest place to actually, instead of turning back, to actually push through? And so this is a very interesting space to think about, because I say nothing ever forced. This is fasting. Fasting is openness. Never forced, never punishing it. But then we think, what is the easiest place? Because we are trying to find, what is the easiest place actually? And if we're struggling through in that space, is it actually easier to fully push through? And then does that, we're going here, in this space, we are asking the question up here, can you just start here? Do you really need to do it? And can you just start here and do it? But does this process, the more intense process, does that just smash all the barriers so that when you actually try to do this, it sets you up? You know, I would love to see just study upon study. I would love to see billions of dollars pouring in and thousands of people in clinical trials studying questions like that. To me, these are the most pertinent questions that we can ask in medicine right now. How do we help the most people to navigate these barriers in powerful ways that deliver people life-changing results without really spending any money? You know, that would revolutionize the healthcare system. Not overnight, but I would tell you it would revolutionize the healthcare system in 1 year. That's what I would say. If we get a lot of people going on processes like this, powerful, totally change the healthcare system. Think of how insurance will change when nobody needs to purchase medical care anymore. Holy cow. Yeah, to me, this is the space to reflect on. This is the space. Nothing, I don't love any food any less than I ever did at any point in time. I want everybody to love their Smith Island cake and have it and on all these things, you know? But finding the way to have it in the balance that works. Like, that's the thing. We don't have to have it all the time, you know? That's the balance. Say, here is a day in my human life where I'm not having it. Like, it's going to be okay. And then we have it. We're flowing through these spaces. The absence from it, bring the appreciation, the gratitude, the joy into it, and then experience it on a deeper level. This is the balance as far as the best that I can say with it at the moment. What were the last comments they had here? Total fast of a day or two for people with mild or moderate obesity, where less severe measures will suffice. However, once patients, I don't like these words either, once patients have been subjected to a total fast, I would not use that language. Once patients have been given the opportunity to do it, see, they're not using that word. It doesn't sound as bad in 1963, probably. Doctors much more paternalistic, I think, than, you know, just kind of, they subject people to things. They command people. There's still a lot of that in medicine. Invariably, they prefer it to low-calorie diets. This is the thing. Once people go through these processes, they're doing little bits of fasting, they say, but once people going through the total fast, they prefer it to the low-calorie diets. They will rarely go back to the continuous low diet. This has been my experience. Like, working with people fasting, when I've got people on fasting regimens, who's ever going to go back, you know, and do Weight Watchers and just count all their points all the time and without ever doing fasting again? Because it's like, you're telling me, like you find the space. Maybe you can't fast quite to the level you want right now, but like, find the space where you can and just embrace that space that you have, where you're feeling comfortable in that space. Like we were saying in this other part of it, that allows you to open up space where you can just eat normal meals. And this is what we want. We don't force ourselves to fast any more than we want or we feel joy from, or that we feel called to do, recognizing potentially there's a space where if we voluntarily feel called to do it, human being is the type of thing that can do difficult things, and you can push through the space. When you're seeing this, you're seeing 107 people did it, and that they broke through every barrier they ever had, and they actually, as they broke through the wall, that they found a space of peace and contentment where they're not suffering or struggling from any hunger, and that they actually prefer it. This is what they say in this thing, that they actually prefer it, would not go back. Once you go through it, but hard hard to sign up for it going ahead of it, right? Because there's the barrier to get through it. You've got to punch through to get to the other side. That's the barrier. That's the struggle. That's the mountain. And that is our task. And that is the task that I have set myself to, which is like, how do we help as many people to experience as much benefit as possible from it? And then so far, I've only experienced, I've really just focused on this short end. Just trying to open the mind. Can we help people to do it in a broader way? Here's how they conclude. We must learn to think of success in terms of 6 months, a year, or even 2 years. I would say absolutely. That's my number, 2 years. I tell people, look, we got 2 years here, and let's really change things over 2 years. Not the type of thing that most people want to hear. But look, they were realizing this back in 1963. That's the place that I came to. We're trying really, and what is 2 years? We're trying to create a lifetime health process, the last sort of health process anyone ever needs. And so 2 years is really just a construct to say, look, we're trying to just really open up some really profound, thoughtful space here that is, it isn't just 6 months and then we're on to the next thing. Tell me what you think of this. This I thought was kind of wild to read. Severe grades of obesity represent a serious disease, right? We've had our whole thing. It's like, I don't like the word disease. I don't say that, but we see the perspective. There's value in each perspective. Just as lethal as tuberculosis used to be. Think of them in the 60s. They just came out of this whole area. Tuberculosis. And yet it shocked no one to embark on a 6-month or 1 year plan to treat the tuberculous patient, okay? I don't like the disease in obesity. I say this is a natural process in the body. We are in a very abnormal situation. This is what I've been sharing on the channel to help open the perspective. We are dealing with a metabolic circumstance. No human being ever had to deal with anything like this. Vast quantities of food that isn't even real, that the body doesn't understand, that is poisoning the natural hormonal state of the body, making us feel like eating all the time, even if we don't need it. Like, this is radically difficult space to navigate. This is what I want to tell people. Radically difficult. The dysfunction, like I said in the video the other day, I chopped up part of our live session on GLP-1s. I put it on a little video all by itself. We're absorbing dysfunction from society into our bodies. That makes it feel like we are some sort of problem. Okay, the society is dysfunctional. That's getting easier to see these days, isn't it? The society is dysfunctional. It is unhealthy. It is a runaway train that is heading in a bad direction. And we're saying we're trying to get off of that. And try to get off of a runaway train, difficult to do. Like, oh man, swimming against the current, difficult to do. We just have our eyes open. We see, okay, all these things are difficult, but healthy, positive to do it. Worth the struggle and the effort to make a change. You say, I don't like where this train's going. I'm getting off. Did you ever watch Mission Impossible? It's Tom Cruise. He gets off the speeding train. Usually a little tough to do, but it's better than... We've noticed an improvement in the past few months in the ability of patients to keep their weight under control by observing 1 fasting day per week. This allows them to be more liberal with their diets on the other days. I cannot overemphasize the fact that they prefer this to perpetual daily denial with no alternatives. Oh man. I think the writing of doctors in 1963 is a lot nicer to read than in general, with some language differences. They're just normal people in 1963. I like reading it, I will tell you. This, I think, is also a really, they kind of made this point we talked about before. Dial in tighter, a 1-day fasting a week, and then more liberal the rest of the week, working for a lot of people. To me, it's so interesting because this has brought me full circle to where I started. I started with fasting 2016 when I just noticed a patient had to fast for 1 day to get a colonoscopy, and did the prep. Not even quite a whole day, and their blood sugar went way down. Had to stop insulin, and so the first protocols that I did with people, 1 day fasting a week, and then 3 meals a day. I started with probably was the first 11 people that went through that I spent a year with doing fasting, was doing this protocol, 1 fasting day a week, and then focusing on the healthiest foods the rest of the time. And I switched more in, to 16-8 and OMAD, just trying to, because it's an easier ask for someone to start. Say, hey, just knock out the breakfast, have a coffee. To me, that's a first step. And so that's where I started kind of coming up with the framework of the steps or levels that, level 1, just stick with a coffee and then have 2 meals. To me, that feels natural. Level 1. And then level 2, get to the OMAD. Level 3, then open up the full fasting day, but doesn't have to be every day, maybe can be just once a week. And so, I get back to that too. Maybe it's reasonable just to offer it as a place to start too. Can you just dive in? Would you rather do it? Some people in this study said they'd rather just do it all the time anyway, a full fasting day and then eat 3 meals a day, like if it worked. Or like I say, it's definitely a dial. What is the level? And it's going to be different for everybody. Throw in a full fasting day, you learn to do it, okay? And then what does that open up? What space does that open up, that gets you the results and the process that you want? If it was the case that a 1 full fasting day, take Monday off and just say, I'll do the fasting day, and then I can eat 3 meals of the rest of the thing. If that worked for somebody, I'd say, well, beautiful. Maybe you got to do a full fasting day and then 2. I say that's more likely to move in a direction. Look at the experience that people had in some of those graphs. They did the full fast, then they were put on 1,500 calories with 1 fasting day a week. That's what a lot of people were doing. 1 fasting day a week, then 1,500 calories. Okay, if you were going to do the protocol, say you're going to try to do what these people did in these studies, what would be the easiest and most comfortable way to do it? Okay, if I had to do it, a full fasting day and then 1,500 calories, I would want to eat those 1,500 calories in 2 meals. I wouldn't want to split them out into 3 meals and have like mini meals like that. I would say I would probably stick with the fasting, have my coffee, and I would eat 2 meals, and then they could be nice, substantial meals. It's a great discussion because y'all here with me throwing great stuff in the chats. Really appreciate the thoughts. Love people's experience, just the reality of it, and we're not trying to do anything other than help everybody step through their real situations. The potential, you say the potential of these things is so big, and we get excited about it and we love it, and then we say, like, then the rubber meets the road, like in reality, say, how do we take these ideas and just channel them into our actual experiences? This is what I like. People using these practices, everything is a balance. Like you say, people having success using fasting, even if the food isn't perfect. I always like to say, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Perfection is not required. We are moving forward in a way that balances everything. I try to tell people, like, say some perfect scenario, say have perfect diet, never an unhealthy thing coming into the body. Say, well, that's okay. And some people can do that. Say some people say, I'm going to lean the hardest into that, and I'm just totally dialed in on the diet. Some people have the right mindset. Other people say it's too much. I want to have a cake here and there, and I want to have some of these things. Okay, we need to bring in the other practices of health. I have everything here fasting based. To me, that's the core practice that helps people move toward weight loss. And then we flow in the diet and the exercise. You know, somebody say, I'm going to dial harder in on the fasting because I don't want the perfect diet, you know? And like they're saying, you know, in some of the reading that we look through in the study, like people really like be able to take some days, a day in a week or something, and dial hard on the fasting, and then they can have a day as more liberal. And then is that a sustainable process to flow through? Lots of different strokes for different folks, as they say. Like, this is our process. We all got the same tools, but what tools do we want? What is the practice, the vision that we have that helps us flow through our experience? Just ate breakfast. Let's see if I can make it until Friday's show. I'll keep you posted. Wish me luck. I am wishing you the most luck that I possibly can through every cyberspace vibe. I channel it out to you. Be kind, gracious to yourself. Use every fasting aid that you want. Use every good mental health practice that you can. And also give yourself tons of grace. Never have to force it, especially if you are feeling unwell, of course. But, you know, open up the possibility that some good things happen and then see where it is. And here we are on Wednesday. We can chat tomorrow and we'll see how it is going. We see how things are on Friday. It's all an exploration. We're all on a journey here together. We are learning, taking steps at a time toward our goal, trying to increase our thinking as much as anything, building a strong, powerful mindset of health, using that mindset to channel in physical health and strength into the body. Really great to share this space with you. Thanks for the discussion. I'll look forward to chatting with you again tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody.